Jim. Jim is going to be talking us through the benefits and why we think students should consider Michigan as a destination for their studies. So Jim, please take it away.
Great, thank you, Marty. Let me share my screen with you and hopefully this will happen like it's supposed to. There we go. And let's look at a presentation about Study Michigan. Again, this will be about 10 minutes. I'm just trying to get, there we go. Is that coming through okay, Marty?
We've got, we do also have, we don't have, it's not the full screen. It's kind of the next full current slide and next slide view.
All right, let's try. Sorry, I'm not sure why. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. So Study Michigan was just founded recently. We've of course been around for a while, but it is an organization where we're highlighting the different institutions in Michigan. So let's look at the United States really quick. And you can see, as Marty pointed out on his map, we're located in the northwestern or middle of the country in the the Midwest, sorry about that, Midwestern United States. So you've got a mitten there in the yellow, you've got a mitten within the Upper Peninsula on top. Our institutions are situated all across the state of Michigan, primarily though in the Lower Peninsula, which is the mitten part of the state. And then we do have a few institutions in the Upper Peninsula as well. So what we'd like to do today, though, is we're going to highlight over 30 of these institutions that are part of Study Michigan. I should note that we are the Great Lakes state, so you will see lakes surrounding. The white here actually is our lakes. And then up here above the lakes will be Canada. So we neighbor on a couple of states or a few states, and then we also are neighbors with Canada as well. So let's go on to the next slide. So we are a top 10 study location for over 31,000 students from around the world. They study at Michigan universities and colleges, and that's data from last year or from 2019. And we are also a top 10 center of students in study abroad as well. So Michigan is a very popular place both for incoming students and for our US students that want to go abroad. Many of our institutions are well over 100 years old, and by worldwide standards, we're relatively young because our nation is relatively young by worldwide standards. But we do have a long-standing reputation of excellence with our institutions, both on the public and the private side. And we will go to the next one. Some of the unique benefits, we have a large range, a broad range of colleges and universities, everywhere from schools that have just a few hundred students to schools that have over 40,000 students. So you've got a wide variety to choose from, both in size, in location, in terms of some that are in the city, some are definitely in a rural area, some are in a suburban area. So again, lots of choices. We have a high student population in terms of some of our institutions, again, getting large populations of international and some getting smaller numbers. So I think you're going to find a variety of situations. Some students prefer to be in locations where they will have a lot of students from their country or from their region, and other students prefer to be in schools where they're not going to encounter a lot of students from their region because they're looking for a different experience. So again, I think we have schools that offer both. Michigan itself has a low cost of living compared to maybe some of the other institutions in other states that are located in cities, and there's certainly nothing wrong with those schools at all. It's just that there are varying levels of cost of living across the US. We have a lot of urban development happening in the US, in Grand Rapids, in Michigan. In Grand Rapids, in Detroit, there's a lot of development happening and a lot of both business growth and new home growth. So it's a very exciting place to be. And most of our students, or at least slightly over half of our students anyway, stay in Michigan for their optional practical training after they graduate. So that means they're staying to do that year of work experience after they're done. There are also many companies, of course, outside the state, and the remaining students are going, across the country sometimes for their OPT. It just kind of depends on where they would like to go and where they like to search for a job. So college life on Michigan campuses is definitely a lot of fun. Our students are very, very active. We have the full range of sports available on our campuses, including American football, basketball, softball, volleyball. I mean, you name it. Each school has their own varsity, potentially varsity sports. Most schools have varsity sports. If not, and even when they do, there's also intramural sports that students can participate in. Social participation also is something that international students really get involved in. I found that international students are very involved in leadership and involvement in clubs and organizations. Sometimes it's even hard to kind of limit what you want to do because there's so many different options for you when you get into a U.S. university. One thing that our institutions do very, very well is emphasize the one-on-one relationship with professors. Even at our larger institutions, this is a very important aspect and one that many of us talk about in our recruitment process, because we feel that relationship can be very beneficial to you as you go through your program, but also as you're looking for a job or an internship at the end, because these professors have contacts and they will get to know your strengths and they'll be able to help you and advise you toward making some great decisions. And again, as mentioned earlier with our numbers, we have a large international community in Michigan, not just students, but we have different areas of the state where many immigrants have settled from different nationalities. So there's that relationship that some of our students are able to build with local community members through civic organizations and churches and things like that, where you can connect with some of these people who have moved to Michigan, as well as the international communities at the different colleges and universities. So admissions and scholarship, I think you want to check with each one individually as to what their procedures are, what their process is. There may be a small application fee, although I think you'll find, at least in some cases, that is being waived currently. Deadlines are important because they do vary by institution, both deadlines for scholarship, which you'll hear about from my colleague Chris in a few minutes, but also deadlines for admission. So admission happening first and usually scholarship deadlines happening a little bit later, but again, that varies by school. So you'll want to check with each one to see what not only their requirements are, but what the deadlines are for each semester. Some of us have fall entry only, so that would be in August or September, and others will offer a January admission as well. The most common entry time is the August-September time. And so that's another important question to ask as to when is the entry point for that particular college or university. The tuition fees, as well as scholarships, do vary from institution to institution. Everybody establishes their own fees, their own level of what the tuition cost will be, and the room and board or room and food cost will be. And then everybody has their own scholarships. If they offer them to international students, then they will vary by institution. And again, Chris will cover some of those variety of scholarships in the next presentation. Many of our schools do offer some kind of or some type of aid. That would include scholarships or need-based aid. So it's important to ask whether they have either one of those, and if so, what it takes to qualify. And again, we'll hear more about that in the next presentation. So Michigan has 4 seasons. And as you see pictures of the 4 seasons there going clockwise, you'll see the windmill there. And that could very well be, that's going to be a spring picture because all the flowers are in bloom. So that's like right now, or maybe in the last month, April and May. The winter shot you see in the upper right, that's a very typical scene in January, February, maybe even as early as December, depending on where you are in the state. But definitely January and February. Most of our roads, however, are very plowed. This is a snow-covered road, and certainly our main roads and our highways are kept very as clean as possible, so that it promotes safe driving, of course. The bottom left is an autumn picture, a fall picture. So September, October, that would probably be a pretty common for late September, early October. The color's changing. It's beautiful in Michigan. And then the bottom right is a summer shot. On the west coast of Michigan, we have the longest stretch of freshwater beach in the world. And so many students will go to visit one of the lakes, one of the Great Lakes in Michigan, to experience the lake shore, beautiful sunsets and sunrises. Water can be a little cold compared to what you might be used to, but certainly in the middle of the summer, there's a lot of people swimming in it. So it can be a very beautiful experience to be on the lakeshore, or even if you just like laying out at the beach, you don't necessarily have to swim. Here's some city shots that and some community shots that we have. So I think this really shows a great selection of, Grand Rapids in the upper left. Yeah, that is the second largest city in Michigan. You've got Detroit over there in the upper right. You've got our capital in the bottom right. You've got some pictures of Lansing or Detroit, probably Detroit down to the bottom left of Greektown. And then again, the lakeshore. So it's a beautiful state. It's a beautiful place to be. Very easy pace of life, very family oriented, very, safe place to be. Students take care of each other. Faculty and staff take care of our students. We're very concerned about our students, and we want to make sure that you have a great experience in Michigan. So that's the Michigan presentation. We're approaching about that 10-minute mark, and we want to make sure that there are time for questions. So I'm going to go off share here, and we'll see if you have any questions. We want to make sure you have a good opportunity to do that.
We've got a couple questions, Jim. This one isn't directly related to Michigan, but it's an interesting one that may have an answer we're all too familiar with on the U.S. side. It's from Yasmin. She says, my daughter is a U.S. citizen but goes to an international school. She'll graduate from that international school. So her question is, will she have to apply as an international student?
Yeah, Yasmin, that's a great question. And it does somewhat depend on the school. But I think as to the process that they'll go through, but I know for like my school, we have one application. So everybody's using the same application, and then they're just indicating on the application what their citizenship is. There could hypothetically be some schools that have a separate application for international and domestic students or students in the US. So if they do have two separate applications, that's a great question to ask that school as to, hey, a US citizen overseas, which one would you like them to use? And then that's up to that school to decide which one they would rather have them use. I think in many cases, they would want them to use the US citizen application if there are two different applications. But again, that's going to be the decision of the college or university. If there is only one application, though, we're going to catch that when they indicate citizenship and then they indicate the school, and the school is we're going to see that the school is overseas. And for example, I work with all international and US abroad. So I would work with your daughter regardless of whether she was international or US citizen. But obviously, then we know what different criteria to require of them. And also in terms of financial aid, there might be a difference between US citizen and international. And we will then know, what advice to give them and what information to pass on. So hopefully that helped with that question.
Great answer there. Jim, we got another question from Joaquin, who is asking about living on campus, international students living on campus in dormitories or residence halls, asking, are they responsible for their own meals, or does the school provide those?
That's another great question. And I think traditionally speaking, if a school has dormitories, which the only ones you might encounter that might not, and even some of them do, but it's a good question to ask, is community colleges. Not every community college has residence halls. And if they don't, then the student will be in an apartment and would be, buying their own food and cooking their own food. But and again, need to ask the community college to be sure whether they have one or not. But as for four-year institutions, almost all of us do have residence halls, and we do offer typically a meal plan. So students would be paying for typically a room and board package. And so that would include the residence hall and a meal plan for so many meals a week that they would choose how many they want. And it might even come with a little bit of what we call munch money, or money on your ID card that you can use in the snack bar. That might come as part of the package as well. So you typically don't have to cook your own food. Maybe as an upperclassman, the student might end up in an apartment on campus or an apartment off campus. And if they do ever end up in an apartment or choose to live in an apartment, then yes, in that case, they would typically be making their own food in their apartment, but they could still purchase a food plan separately for the cafeteria if they didn't want to cook at home.
Great.
So hopefully that helps.
That does, yeah. One last question I think we have time for is, Jim, you've been in Michigan most of your life, all your life. I know, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But what would you say distinguishes Michigan from the rest of the United States? Why would you encourage international students to choose it over so many other destinations, states, and countries, places in the country that they might know of or heard about, like the coasts? But what really sets Michigan apart?
Yep, we have, there's a number of things that I would bring out. One, the Midwestern area, including Michigan, is very friendly, very family oriented. So, many schools line international students up with a host family or a friendship family as a local connection. That can be very helpful. I think we have a lot of worldwide industries that chose to locate in Michigan. So things like the big three auto firms, Dow Chemical, Dow Corning, Amway, Steelcase, many of the companies like that who have, who are world headquarters or national headquarters in Michigan. So it's a popular place for that. And I think that students can get some, make some really good choices academically due to our wide variety of institutions that really care about their students. I mean, the fact that we're in the top 10 in the nation for the incoming students tells us that, we're doing the right thing in attracting some really, really top quality students.
That's great, Jim. Thanks so much. I think that's all we have time for the Why Study in Michigan section. And feel free to connect with Jim afterwards in his room, and we'll provide the link to that a little bit later. So let's welcome on board our next colleague,